Everyone has to start somewhere. While Joy Behar is a successful comedian and talk show host, she was not great at one of her first jobs. More than 4 decades after getting fired, she returned to her old stomping grounds for a segment on The View. Keep reading to find out the shocking reason she got fired. Joy Behar reveals first job at ABC. Joy Behar knew she was destined for greatness, but it took her a while to discover where. The Brooklyn, New York native was a high school English teacher before she made a huge career change. She dumped the teaching job to try to make a name for herself in the entertainment industry. Rising to fame is easier today than it was back then. The future host of The View had to start in an entry-level job. Joy Behar's first job at ABC was as a receptionist at Good Morning America in 1979. She lasted 3 years before she was fired for being terrible at her job. GMA turns 50 this year. Joy Behar returned to The View on Friday, November 14th, after missing several days due to an injury. Upon her return, she took part in a special segment to celebrate Good Morning America's milestone anniversary. Joy Behar took over the receptionist's desk at the morning program to relive the job that got her fired. The View host returns to the job that got her fired. Joy Behar told her co-hosts, "I'm going back to GMA to be a receptionist for the day because who doesn't like a side hustle?" But the job wasn't as easy as she remembered. Joy Behar returns to the job that got her fired. She jokingly struggled with the inane questions callers asked on the phone. One caller asked for the recipe celebrity chef Rocco DiSpirito shared on GMA. "No, I'm sorry, I don't. Look online, you'll find it," Joy Behar said, before hanging up the phone and returning to her crossword puzzle. ABC News senior executive producer David Sloan shared that Joy was just as bad at answering the phones back in the day. Quote, "Joy would answer the phone, she would give you the message, there would be 6 digits on it. I said, 'Joy, phone numbers have 7 digits. No apology, she would say, 'Whatevs,'" her former coworker shared. "You know, as far as I was concerned, they were lucky to have me there. They knew that I was slated for bigger and better things, so they didn't want to hold me back," Joy Behar said about getting fired from her receptionist job. David Sloan claimed that the host of The View stole office supplies on her last day of work. Joy Behar jokingly stuffed a tote bag full of office supplies at the end of the segment. Fans can't get enough Joy. Fans of The View loved seeing Joy Behar back where it all started. One fan gushed online, "Love it, she's a national treasure." Another wrote, "Hopefully Joy has some closure now with GMA." Being fired from there is a huge part of her backstory. She brings it up very often in the podcast. Tell us in the comments if you would return to your first job for a do-over. Joy Behar returns to the desk that fired her 43 years ago. Hilarious GMA reunion proves some things never change. New York, Joy Behar has never been shy about telling the world she was once fired from ABC.
It's become one of her favorite punchlines. But on Friday, November 14th, 2025, the 83-year-old co-host of The View didn't just talk about the infamous dismissal, she lived it all over again, sliding back behind the receptionist desk at Good Morning America for a hilarious, full-circle segment that left both crews in stitches and fans declaring her a national treasure. The occasion? Good Morning America is celebrating its 50th anniversary this month, and producers thought there was no better way to mark half a century of morning television than by inviting back the woman who holds the distinction of being one of the worst receptionists in the network's history. From Brooklyn classroom to the GMA switchboard. Long before she was roasting politicians on The View, before she sold out comedy clubs in Greenwich Village, and even before she was a regular on the stand-up circuit, Joy Behar was Josephine Ochiuto, an English teacher from Brooklyn who decided in her late 30s that grading papers wasn't cutting it. In 1979, armed with 0 television experience but plenty of chutzpah, she talked her way into an entry-level job as a receptionist at the fledgling Good Morning America, then only 4 years old, and still finding its footing against CBS's dominant Captain Kangaroo and NBC's Today. Behar lasted exactly 3 years. "I was terrible," she has freely admitted for decades. "I didn't care about the phones. I was doing crossword puzzles, eating my lunch at 9 a.m., and telling callers, 'Look it up yourself.'" On Fridays, she proved the muscle memory is still strong. "Whatevs." The reunion. Dressed in a bright red blazer and armed with a tote bag for later, Behar marched onto the GMA set to a standing ovation from Robin Roberts, George Stephanopoulos, Michael Strahan, and the entire studio audience. A vintage 1980s-style phone console had been wheeled out just for her. Within 30 seconds of sitting down, the lines lit up. Caller 1. Hi, can you give me the recipe that Rocco DiSpirito made this morning? Behar, without missing a beat. No, I'm sorry, I don't have it. Google it, honey. It's 2025. Click. She immediately went back to her crossword. The studio erupted. ABC News senior executive producer David Sloan, who worked with Behar in the early 80s, was brought out as a special guest to roast her live on air. Joy would take a message and hand you 6 digits, Sloan recalled, holding up a yellow sticky note for the camera. I'd say, Joy, phone numbers have 7 digits. She'd shrug and go, whatevs. No apology, nothing. Behar, feigning offense, shot back, listen, they were lucky to have me. They knew I was destined for bigger things. I was basically doing them a favor by warming the chair. Sloan wasn't done. On her last day, she cleaned out the supply closet. Pens, legal pads, 3-hole punch, gone. Cue Behar theatrically stuffing her tote bag with highlighters, Post-its, and a stapler while the audience howled. Statute of limitations is up, she yelled, waving a handful of Sharpies in victory.